Jeff Ogilvy survives wing foot.
Now the moment Aaron Badley has waited.
Gary Webb is the 5-time Australian Open champion.
Golf at its best by one of the best in golf, Peter Thompson.
Stand in front of a crowd like this today and win the PGA Championship is pretty special.
He's done it at last. Greg Norman.
Matt Jones gets his name on the Stonehaven Cup.
Lee spin to 11 under. Now we've got a new leader, kids.
There it is! Adam Scott. A life changer. Coming up next, you have unrestricted access to golf across Australia and the world. Thanks to Golf Australia, we're going inside the ropes.
G'day everybody, thanks for joining us on Inside the Ropes. Great to have you with us, episode number 26, I think we're up to, Hazy. Great to be here again with you, great man. Good to see you.
Andy, I'm really excited. We've got a massive show today. 2 words, Gary Player.
Well, I thought you were going to say Golfing Royalty is going to join us, and you're right, because Clates is here as well. Hello, Michael. How are you?
Andy, I'm very good.
Speaking to your microphone, Clates. You know how this works by now. Stop reading your phone.
Stop reading the phone.
Yeah, and
speak into the microphone. Oh, good. Gary Player, what a legend.
I'm really excited. When we get to him, I reckon he's going to have some interesting stories.
I can't wait. It's not until he actually, because, you saw him play, Mike. You actually watched him play.
I played the last round he played in Australia. I played with him.
Is that right?
At Huntingdale, yeah, the Australian Masters. He was 60 probably.
Did you get him?
No, he beat me easy. He shot 70, I shot 73. But he was still a terrific player. Really good golfer at 60. He could still beautiful swing, and he was a tremendous player.
And speaking of Ironman, Andy, we don't normally talk about timings of this podcast, but we're sitting here this morning in Melbourne just on 6 o'clock to record, because that's when we can get Gary Player in a couple of minutes, hopefully. But we've got someone else coming on a little later.
Oh, this is an unbelievable story.
Freddie Lee from Perth, who's one of our favourites. We're going to speak to him probably around 7 o'clock Melbourne time as we record this, because that's when we're in the studio, obviously, with Gary. The poor young fella's getting up at 4 o'clock, Andy, to talk to us Muppets.
That's unbelievable.
This is commitment. We've got them from all over the globe.
Well, that's what happens. See, when they're amateurs, they're desperate for an invite to the Australian Open. They'll do anything for you. They turn pro. They want $1 million to play. They don't want to talk to you. Only talk to my manager. They turn into complete pains in the backside when they turn pro.
Anyone want to talk about managers on the show today? Anyone want to have a chat about them or not?
Oh, gee, it's tempting. It's really tempting. I promise our loyal listeners that I will have a red-hot crack at some point in the future.
One of these days, the time will be right, and we'll have a chat about it.
Mac O'Grady had there were some very good player managers. I had a manager, Steve Fraser, who
great man,
who signed Ian Baker Finch, Wayne Grady, and I, the first 3 signers he had. They were tremendous managers. Did a great job.
Octagon?
It was called Weekly Sport. He was with Glenn Weekly.
Oh, Glenn Weekly, yeah.
It was a lovely, but we had a great time with Glenn. And then it became Advantage and it became Octagon.
There you go, yeah.
And did a great job. But the worst of them, Mac O'Grady, the player, had my favourite saying of mine. He called them parasites feeding off the carcasses of professional athletes. And there were some good ones, but over the time, there have been numerous stories of the dishonesty and just how they've done nothing for the game aside from line their own pockets.
For the record, there are a lot of good ones, and Tony Buffler is a good friend of mine and a great fella, and he's got the best interest of the game at heart. But there's, as Clayton says, there's a few out there with ulterior motives. Yeah. That's for sure. So I promise, Andy, at some point, probably in early 2018, I'll have a crack.
The door feels like it's open here, Clayton, but we won't walk through it right now.
But it's fair to say that they put themselves and the money they make for themselves and their clients in brackets, because they're the 25% men, before the best interests of the game.
Particularly we feel it particularly in places like Australia, because we're a satellite. We're a satellite interest as far as this. We're not the mother lode for these guys down here. So for the international managers. For tours like ours to get their interest, they're only interested in one thing. It's got nothing to do with what we'll probably talk to Gary Player about, his responsibility that he saw and took upon himself to internationalise the game. And these people that we're talking about who stand between, the satellite tours and the player, they don't give a stuff about any of that. They're only interested in one language. And if you're not talking the right amount of cash, don't talk to me, you know.
And Clayton's mentioned just in passing there a magical figure, and I think it's different for most players. It might be a little higher, even it might be a little lower, but 25% the words that came out of Clayton's mouth a second ago. That's ballpark of what it would be for most elite players, for managers to take off things other than winnings. So if we were to, for example, get Tiger Woods to Australia for $5 million. That means that, what's his name, Clates?
Well, I think
Mark Steinberg would pocket a cool $1 million.
Well, I think they probably had a different deal. I don't think Tiger was silly enough to give a manager that much money.
But that was just an example, and I'm not Tiger, and it's not that number. I'm just by way of example. It clearly demonstrates the power of the dollar in them making a decision. If I can get $1 million out of his $5 million to come to Australia, happy days. Just if I put a name on a contract and I put 7 figures in my bank account. Are you kidding me?
Do it.
Mind you, Tiger's number's not $5 million anymore, but
no, that was a bad example.
But I know what you mean.
Let's just go with.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah, let's just go with Phil Mickelson, who might well still command $2 million. That's a $400,000 decision or a $500,000 decision for his manager.
Yeah.
For doing stuff all, really. Like, everything will be done for him. All the flights will be organised. If they want it to be that way, this is where we want to travel, make it happen. This is where we want to stay, make it happen. We want a car, make it happen. This is what we don't want to do. Make sure we don't have to do any of that. Narrow the responsibilities of the player to such a point that by the time the contract's done, you don't have to do anything else, the manager. He just has to sit next to the bloke on the plane. And
you could dust Phil Mickelson's Visa card for fingerprints. You won't find any. He hasn't touched that sucker for a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't go anywhere and pay for the buffet at down at the RSL.
Not putting his hand in his pocket. No.
So, I mean, and to that point, like, there's ridiculous demands, potentially even on top of that, whereby...
Oh, he's warming up.
I'm going to walk away in a second. But there might be a case in point where a request has come through for a social media plug, for example, and the contract by the manager will be asked to be upped so that we can get a tweet or something like that. So I mean, I'm going into.
It's a bit more onerous now because it's 280 characters. A lot harder now to put out a tweet than it was a week ago.
Yeah, that's right. It might take 20 seconds instead of 10.
We should.
Anyway, this is dangerous territory, but I will say that they are a concerning factor in the overall landscape of the game.
Like the golf ball. Let's hope we can wind them all back at some stage. Okay, look, Gary Play's not too far away from joining us, so there's a bunch of news that's been floating around that if we don't get to it before Gary Play, we'll knock it off at the end of the show today. A bit of controversy around the conclusion of the Champions Tour. The Charles Schwab Cup was competed for on the weekend, and it's been won in slightly perplexing and controversial circumstances. Can anyone explain to me how this has happened?
No.
Well, all I know, the last time I looked was that Bernhard Langer had won 7 times this year. Didn't have his greatest weekend in the finale and is up the creek.
He's been knocked over by Kevin Sutherland,
who didn't win one tournament. And
he's won one tournament in 4 years.
And in the first 2 playoff events, he was mid-40s, and then he wins the tournament. He wins I'm a bit in the Grayson Murray who put out another magnificent tweet. Just put your Twitter away, mate. Who said, "Who cares about these guys? They're so irrelevant. They're so yesterday's men," which is kind of partly true in a sense. It's a Champions Tour. I mean,
yeah.
It's a retirement fund, but the Champions Tour was great when Sam Snead was playing and Jack and Bernhard's kind of relentlessly good to watch. But is it really that interesting? And does anyone really care about Kevin Sutherland winning $1 million in the Charles Schwab Cup and Bernhard Langer not getting it? Because Bernhard really needs another $1 million.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a ridiculous system. Clearly, when someone can be so outstandingly the dominant player. And more amazingly, at 60, not 50, and not win the big pot at the end of the year. I mean, seriously.
But that could actually happen in the FedEx Cup too. I mean, you just...
Get hot. Get in, so sneak in on the number. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, Rory McIlroy did it 2 years ago, or 2 FedEx Cups ago. So, there's a lot of flaws in that system that try to make it an alluring television commodity at the end of the season.
They try and contrive a tight finish when clearly, well, sorry, boys, Bernhard's won 7, so he's won the thing. So we're not actually... Bernhard gets the $1 million on the first tee. Well done, you're the player of the year. And
let's go and play for the $440,000.
Let's play for the prize.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Andy was trying to wind me up and just also then pull me back, but you mentioned a great favourite of his there, Grayson Murray. I reckon we should just wind him up and let him have a crack at Grayson Murray for me. Yeah, go.
No, well, I'm a bit on this particular one. I'm a bit on both sides of the fence here. The guy can't control himself. He shut down his own Twitter account and he's rebooted it. It's taken him about 5 minutes to get himself into trouble again. He's had to put out the rote kind of apology at the end of it.
Which is like...
Just don't do it.
Sportsmen should never apologise.
Well,
just don't apologise. Just don't do it.
Did you see? Look, I'm obsessed. Not obsessed, but I'm interested in this stuff. So he puts the apology out, right? Which he's hoping is going to curry some favour with the broader golfing community. He gets smashed for putting the apology out. You weak bastard. Stand your ground. What are you apologising for? So he can't win, the poor bloke. He's just not bright enough to see the forest of the trees in the first place, so he shouldn't do it. He should just remove himself from the landscape altogether. But I'm a bit with you. I'm a bit with Clayton on this one to begin with, that he's sort of made a bit of a reasonable point. Like, what's all the fuss about, fellas? Like, everyone just calm down. No one really... We're not that interested in what you blokes are doing. Good luck to you. Go over there and have your tour, but let's not make it the front page story of the week. I mean, that's not what he said. He said, you blokes used to be relevant. No one cares now.
Which is kind of true. But, it's fun to watch. I enjoy watching people who...
Speak into your microphone, will you, please?
I enjoy watching people who play golf well. I don't care, man, woman, old, young. Someone who plays golf beautifully is worth watching. Bernhard Langer is a fascinating study in watching just a bloke who's... Like Bob Charles has done the same thing every single day of his professional career and is still a great player at 60. Of course, he can't compete in the PGA Tour, but having said that, he was in the last group at the Masters last year.
Yeah.
But, just an abject lesson and just beautiful lesson in perseverance and consistency and hitting good shots and grinding it out and attention to detail. And you could teach a lot of young kids a lot about how to, as Peter Fowler can or could. We should talk to Freddie Lee about this because I know it's his coach's pet hate, about attention to detail and just how hard these guys work.
Well, that was the thing that I took away from Langer at the end of it. Like, Langer was sort of talking about how the fact that they're, this system is a work in progress, and he's on the committee that sets the rules, and we're going to try this year, but it doesn't mean it's going to be the rules next year in terms of the finale. But then after that, and they actually talked about his year that he's had, he was saying, look, I'm just trying to be better. I'm just trying to get better. Next year, I hope to be a better chipper. And if I'm not going to be a better chipper, hopefully I'm going to be a better putter. And that you say attention to detail, but that manic, and not everyone's got this. In fact, very few, I imagine, athletes have got in any sport. You get to the age of 60 plus, all they want to do is improve. Like, relax, mate.
Yeah.
Go and put on 15 kilos and just relax. Go and enjoy your life.
That's what I did. That was the only thing that stopped me.
Yeah, Bernhard Langer's not drinking Fanta.
At 6 o'clock in the morning when he's about to speak to Gary Player.
Yeah.
That's not happening. Look, he's about to join us, so we better get a break out of the way here on Inside the Ropes. We are continuing our road to the Open. We'll talk about the build-up to that after we've had the great opportunity to speak to Gary Player up next.
Hi, this is Sherelle McMahon. Swing Fit is the fun, healthy, social way for women to get started in golf. You'll learn the basics of the golf swing and how to putt over a 6-week program and get your whole body moving through yoga and Pilates-style exercises. You don't need any golf knowledge or equipment. Simply turn up in comfy clothing and get started. You'll be surrounded by like-minded people and receive constant support. So get outdoors, meet new friends and learn a sport that you can play for the rest of your life. To find a program near you, visit swingfit.com.au.
G'day, it's Nick O'Hearn here. Whenever I get the chance, I catch up with Inside the Ropes to follow up on all the latest golf, and I urge you to all do the same. It's a great show.
Well, the Road to the Open series has been an absolute winner for all of us involved here at Inside the Ropes, but it's next level stuff, Hazy and Clayton. So I've got to say today the opportunity to speak to Gary Player, who won 7 Australian Opens and was such a magnificent international ambassador for the game every time he came down to these shores. Joins us on the show. Gary, it's an absolute honour to be speaking to you. Thanks for your time.
It's a pleasure. I just love Australia and Australians, and I miss Australia terribly. But anyway, it's a pleasure to talk to you guys.
Why was we understand the commercial reasons for why you came down here, and we'll probably have a chat to you about those on the way through, but it was more than that, wasn't it? What the Australian Open and playing golf down here came to mean to you. Why did it become such a big part of your life?
Well, first of all, there was no commercial. We were paid something like $10,000 or something, whereas today they paid hundreds of thousands and millions. I just loved Australia. The Australian Open, to me, was the fifth most important tournament in the world at that time. Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer, Lee Trevino, everybody wanted to come down and play in the Australian Open, and I don't know what happened. It just things seemed to collapse in the golf world there. But anyway, I was so delighted to come down there, and I tell you, they called me Gaza there, and I just absolutely, I can't tell you in words how much I enjoyed coming down there and playing.
Well, how come that fascination reached around the world, Gary? I mean, the fifth major, we all loved that for such a long time. Obviously, it's not now. How did that get around the world in your estimation?
I don't know. I think it's the top players taking part in it all the time. I think that's what gave it the honour of winning. I mean, everybody wanted to go to Australia and win the Australian Open, just like in tennis. It's one of the majors.
So, Gary, a part of the problem now is that if we bought the equivalent of you and Jack and Arnold to play at the Australian Open, it would cost us more than $3 million because you would be charging $1 million each, probably, or more, because Tiger Woods played the Australian Masters here in 2009 and got $3 million.
Well, you see, I can't think in terms of that kind of thing because we never got that. We got just a handful of dollars to go and play. We wanted to play around the world and promote the game. And one of my favourite records is 7 Australian Opens because it was over nearly 20 years. It is very hard to win consistently for a long time. And I always made sure I travelled the world to play in different countries promoting our wonderful game of golf.
So, Gary, I watched you. Oh, it was a big deal for me. You had a beautiful pair of brown pants on, a beautiful brown polo neck jumper as we ran down the first fairway at Kingston Heath in 1970, in the days when the gallery walked on the fairway. Do you think that was a good thing or a bad thing for golf that you had the crowds on the fairway as opposed to behind the ropes?
No, that was a bad thing to have them inside the ropes. You just couldn't play golf like that. I don't know how we did it. I don't know how people weren't hurt. No, they're keeping the people on the outside of the ropes. They can see much more. People were denied of seeing the golfers once they were inside the ropes.
Well, I saw it because I could run. I remember sprinting down the first fairway at the Kingston Heath to get the front row seat.
Gary, you won in all corners of Australia pretty much. Did you? And I know you've given many politically correct answers to all these questions. Did you have a favourite course among the ones you won on, or those you didn't salute at?
Oh no, the Sandbelt golf courses were my favourite, and that's, you know, I'm so prejudiced because I won the Ampol tournament, which was bigger than 3 or 4 times bigger than the British Open at that time.
Wow.
And when I won it, it enabled me to get married to my wife, Vivian, who's been a wonderful wife. And, how do I ever say thank you enough for that? I've been married for 60 years and 6 children and 22 grandchildren. So Australia played a vital role in that.
That tournament got promoted all of that?
Yes, it did. It did.
Mate, there's a funny story, and I'm sure you can enlighten us. I think it was when you won at Kooyonga in 1965, maybe.
Yep.
Yes.
When you shot the just unbelievable scores. There was we heard the other day about you maybe joking back and forth with Jack Nicklaus about shooting 62s on alternate days. Could you remember yelling across the fairway to him, or a story similar to that?
Yes, he was. At that time, I'd shot 62 the first day. And he said, I'm going to get you a little butt tomorrow. And he shot 63 and I shot 70. I said, how can I have an average of 66 and be 3 behind you? But I'm going to get you American butt tomorrow. And after 10 holes, I was 10 under. And he said his caddy running across to see how I was going. And I said to him, I'm 10 under, mate. No, he said, not for the tournament. He said, for today. I said, I'm 10 under. And Jack Nicklaus walking on the adjacent fairway said, "You're trying to put me off. You're telling a big lie."
What did he say afterwards when you actually showed him the scorecard?
Jack Nicklaus was a wonderful winner and a wonderful loser. He was thrilled for me to have won the Australian Open. And then I was in the airport with yellow pants and a red jacket and white shoes, and a little old lady came up to me and said, "You look like the bus driver. Where do I get my tickets to go downtown?"
How much were you driven, Gary, by the competitiveness with? You would have known at the time that you're playing in an era where you and Jack and Tom and you're playing with some of the players who you knew would have been going down as the greatest amongst the greatest players in the history of the game. How much did that drive you?
Oh, extremely so. But I hit more balls than any man that ever lived, and I travelled more miles than any human being that's ever lived. I wanted to have the best record in the world. I wanted to have the best world record, not the most majors, not this or that, the best world record, and I think I achieved that by winning in more countries than most people have ever done and more times. So
what do you say to the modern-day players who, we joke on this show that, half the blokes on the PGA Tour probably don't even have a passport. What do you say to them that they don't have that, they don't embrace that responsibility the way you did?
I don't know what you say to them. First of all, to travel is a great education, and I don't know how you can't put passion into somebody. That's something you either have or you don't have, and I was very poor as a kid, so I struggled, and every opportunity I had to play somewhere in the world, I enjoyed it and I loved it.
Gary, we joke about AFL footballers who have to travel to Perth to play a football match, and they've got to fly back in the cribs to keep their body oxygen up on the way back to make sure they're ready to play the next week, and I laugh at that. You played the 1963 Australian Open at Royal Melbourne, and you left Paris and the World Cup at Sonoma-Batesh on Monday, I think. So you and Bruce Devon, can you run through that trip from Paris to Melbourne
to
play the Australian Open?
The round was fogged out, and Arnold and Jack said they were not coming because the travel agent said, "I can get you to Royal Melbourne 3 hours before you play." And I flew to New York, to LA, to Hawaii, to Fiji, to Sydney, to Royal Melbourne. I got there 3.5 hours before. This is the most amazing win of my life, by the way.
Yeah.
I'd never seen the golf course. Had a shower and a sandwich. Can you believe this? With a 16-hour time change, whatever it is, and won the Open by 7 shots.
And
that was a miracle, I can tell you. That was an absolute miracle.
So which clubs did you play with? The clubs you'd play with in Paris or the Schlesinger clubs?
No. I had a new set of Schlesinger clubs at that time and changed to the ball. I don't know. Look, I don't know how I did it. It was a divine intervention, I can promise you.
So did you just play the course as you saw it in front of you? Is that kind of, you stand on the first tee, and you just play what's in front of you? Is that what you did?
That's what I did, and I don't know, I still today tell people of all my 165 victories, that was the most amazing, not necessarily the most important. But today these guys are taking so much time, they look at a piece of paper when they get on the green to see which way the grade's growing.
Well, speaking of that, what do you make of the green books? Do you think they should be banned by the RNA?
Yes, they will be banned. They will be banned. It's just a matter of time. They're making the game. If you have a one practice round, anyway, look, a pro doesn't even need to. You put me on any green in the world, first time I can tell you where to putt. If you can't do that, you've got problems.
Well,
they're making the game too slow, too expensive, and they're making the golf courses too long. The one great dream I had all my life was to build one golf course in Oz, and it never happened. We came close, but they ran out of money. But my goodness me, if you ever hear of a course, that's something I'd love to do before I die one day.
Where was that going to be, Gary?
Anywhere in Australia.
Oh, there wasn't something specific on the books?
It was in the Gold Coast.
Now, well, we'll go on to our other favourite bashing subject, which is the golf ball, because I suspect you have a view on the golf ball that would be in line with ours. What do you make of the modern ball and what it's done to the great courses and how they're played by the best players?
They've absolutely ruined them. I think as far as the weekend golf is concerned, they must keep the ball and keep the equipment going for them. But for pro golf, you've got to cut the ball back 50 yards. I was at Sun City for the big tournament over the weekend. Sullivan from Britain hit a drive and a 4-iron to the 10th hole. Nicholas used to hit a drive and a 1-iron, and Nicholas is 60 yards longer than he is. So it's making people make the golf courses longer, using more water, and Australia and South Africa don't have water, and they're making the costs too high, and the members hate it when their golf courses get changed with bunkers in front of the greens for the old members and make the greens too undulating. The ball has destroyed the game, in my opinion, as far as that's my humble opinion, and a lot of players agree to that. They say, well, the players are stronger today. They're not. Sam Snead was the strongest and greatest athlete in golf that ever lived. Nicholas, Palmer, Snead, Mike Suchak was a football player, George Bayer. They were actually stronger than the guys today, so I don't want to hear that nonsense.
What about the use of statistics to prevent any change to the ball, Gary? What do you see the R&A or the USGA or whoever it is, the tour, say, oh, technically things haven't changed too much?
No, well, they're just absolutely dreaming. They're absolutely dreaming, and I'll tell you what's more, they're going to hit the ball not 400 yards. When I told that in television, they said I was crazy. You got some players that are going to hit the ball 430 yards, a Michael Jordan, a Shaq O'Neal, or a LeBron James. They haven't had big people, really big people, play the game yet. Wait until that happens. The golf courses, they're hitting driving 9-irons and 8-irons to par 5s. I mean, what is going to happen? I mean, at St Andrews, the home of golf, they'll drive 9 greens in another 10 years.
Are you confident that they'll wind it back, Gary, or not?
That's an absolute certainty. It's an absolute certainty.
I saw the longest iron until he played that new hole in Boston that Gil Hansted at the tournament in Boston. The longest iron Dustin Johnson had hit to a par 4 this year was a 6-iron.
No, I tell you, it's quite sad. It's very, very sad to
crazy,
see
isn't it?
what's happening in golf. That's why the rounds are down. People are changing their golf courses to make them longer, spending more money, and economically it's hurting. Then they levy the members, and then the people resign because they don't like these long, difficult golf courses. The whole thing is a mess.
So, Gary, what would you say to Brad Faxon, who tweeted last week saying, I see Tigers come out against the modern ball just like Gary and Jack and Arnold and Greg have. He said, oh, listen, when one of the current top 10 players in the world comes out against the ball. How do you counter that?
Well, I don't know.
Crazy argument.
Yeah, everybody's got an opinion, you follow? So you must have respect for everybody's opinion. But I'm delighted that Tiger has come out with that. I mean, it's just logic. I mean, all that you can see what's happening. I mean, you know what's going to happen when you see when you see people at Augusta hitting a 9-iron to a par 5. I mean, I don't know, and I see them scoring the kind of scores. Look, it's all a matter of an opinion.
Gary, you've been changing tactics a little bit here. You've been linked with Jack and Arnie inextricably through your career. We've seen you so many times on the first tee at Augusta National. What does that mean to you, and what was it like when the third member of that trilogy wasn't there?
Well, it's always been an honour to be selected to play off there, and we were in tears with Arnold not teeing up this year. Particularly the chair had his jacket on, and it broke us down a bit.
Is it hard to sort of comprehend what that means to other people in your eyes?
Well, I don't know. You see, I can never speak for other people, but Arnold and I travelled the world together, and we went down gold mines in South Africa. He visited my farm. I visited his home. I flew in his aeroplane. Arnold, Jack, and I were the big three, and there might be another big three come along and win 350 tournaments and 56 majors, counting seniors and regular. That can happen, but I don't think you'll ever have a big three that travel together and live together like brothers as we did.
I'm certain that that's absolutely true. And one thing with that that they didn't do was engage, although Jack's not too bad, they didn't engage on social media and continue to be relevant to new fans. You are a guru on Twitter, among other things. How and why?
Well, I love to see people win tournaments and encourage them, because I struggle in my life, and I know any time I got any encouragement, it meant an awful lot to me. But anyway, guys, I got to go to bed. It's way past my bedtime. What's the time in Australia now? 12:30?
Very early in the morning over here, Gary. It's up 6 in the morning in Melbourne. So
oh my goodness!
It's been.
Well, listen, guys, give my best love to your great country. I miss them so much. It brings tears to my eyes, and God bless Australia.
Gary, it's been a joy to have a chat to you on the program. We've enjoyed it so much. Thanks for giving us your time.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks, Gary.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
G'day, I'm My Golf Ambassador Jason Day. I'm really excited to be an ambassador for My Golf, Australian Golf's national junior program, jointly run by Golf Australia and the PGA. My Golf is every Aussie kid's first step on their golfing pathway. It's all about teaching children the basic skills of golf in a safe and healthy environment, and just as importantly, about the life skills that golf can teach you that distinguish our sport from the rest. Remember to visit mygolf.org.au for more information.
G'day, my name's Hannah Green. Thanks to Inside the Ropes for making all my travels on the Symetra Tour so much fun.
Well, how good was that? I can't believe he's obviously set the alarm to stay awake for us in the first place. He's wound us up because he wants to go to bed. He's over at his farm, wherever that is, over in South Africa. But how good was that to get 15 or 16 minutes with Gary Player?
Unbelievable, and it leaves you wanting more. Like, I think we could all jot down a list of questions that would take him 4 or 5 hours to ask, but or answer, I should say. But wow, that guy's a bona fide legend of all sports, of all time, and a tremendous honour that he's on Inside the Ropes with us. What's
his relationship like with Bobby Locke? Do you know?
Oh, I think pretty good. I think,
yep.
Yeah, I think pretty good. Thompson fell out with Bobby. Well, they fell out over that incident on the final green at St Andrews when Locke moved his coin across, forgot to put it back, putted it out, won the tournament by 4 shots, and then it came up after the thing had finished. And Norman von Knight brought it up. Thompson never brought it up, never spoke about it. But Locke, I think, thought that Thompson had something to do with it.
Right.
They fell out a bit. But no, I think he was a strange bloke, I think, Bobby Locke. Well, he was odd. And
trivia, Clates, 3 South Africans to win the Australian Open.
Yeah.
Bobby Locke, Gales, Gary Player. Who was the other one?
Ernie Els.
No, Ernie never won.
Did he win it?
Oh, Tim Clark.
Well done. I knew he'd get it.
Oh, he did, yeah. Ernie didn't win it.
No. He never played it. I don't think he ever played it. And
I'm thinking
the South African who won at Victoria, Kobe LaGrange, 1964, won the Wills Masters.
Oh, there you go.
Beat Jack Nicklaus.
There's some other things I want to talk to you about regarding Gary Player, because we didn't get the chance to speak to Gary about it. But we've got a young man on the line who, so from one end of the golfing spectrum to the other, who's got a genuinely remarkable story. Hazy, I should defer to you here because you'll tell me Fred Lee's story. Now, we said it right off the top. This bloke's been good enough to get up. The birds haven't even started chirping over in Perth yet, and Fred's been good enough to get up to take our call and join us on Inside the Ropes. Fred Lee joins us. Fred, thanks for joining us on the show, mate. It's a joy to know your story, which everybody else is about to find out about. Thanks for your time, mate.
Thank you for having me.
Fred, this is a truly remarkable story on so many levels, but specifically the reason this morning we have you on is to congratulate you and ask you about being taking up a spot at Stanford University, the famous Stanford University in California next year. Well done, and maybe you could share a little bit about that story with us right now.
Thanks so much. To be honest, I never really thought about it in my wildest dreams. It only really hit me a couple of weeks ago when I was actually playing over in the US for the Juniors President's Cup. When I was fortunate enough to watch the real President's Cup, and I was lucky enough to get a photo and speak to Tiger Woods. And one of the things that he said to me was, I'll see you around at school, buddy. And I was like, okay, cool. I walked off, and I was like, wait a minute. And then it just hit me.
That's very cool. Well, mate, we might come back and talk to you about the President's Cup and Gary Player and Tiger again in a second, but so that people realise the sort of incredible nature of this story, Fred, still 17, Fred, right?
18.
Just turned 18?
In July.
Beg your pardon. Fred's just finished his HSC equivalent, whatever it's called in Western Australia, I apologise, studies this year. But in addition to that, Stanford, who were very keen on his golf, Andy, insisted that he finalise his SAT studies so that he could actually hold a ranking and potentially qualify for a scholarship. So, and while we've been doing this HSC in Perth, Fred's just quietly been doing year 1 to 12 studies through the US through the year, and he's got his SATs right on the number, Fred, I believe.
Yeah, I was really, really fortunate I was really relieved to just get in, basically, because I needed a certain score to make the guys over in the admission office happy, and basically I tattooed that score into my brain and just tried every way to get that score I needed in the end, and it took me about, I think, 2 months in total, just the whole process of just studying, grinding, and basically teaching myself a new curriculum to get that score. And honestly, it all worked out in the end. I'm so glad for it, and I'm really happy with the efforts that I put in paid off.
How do you juggle that, mate, in a really important time of... Forget golf and forget the US. It's a really important time in your life as a young man. How do you juggle, your own Year 12 studies in Perth with all that, plus going to the Junior President's Cup, as you mentioned? You went to Sage Valley Invitational, you went to the Australian Junior, and you, of course, played the Callaway Junior there in Perth. It's only your 4 tournaments for the year, but that's another story we'll talk about in a minute. But how do you balance all that stuff?
I think that to balance a really heavy workload, you have to understand what is important, especially to yourself. To me, I understood that I really wanted to become a professional golfer in the future, and I also understood that I really enjoyed studying, and to me, education was extremely important. So even though there's only 24 hours in a day, I think if you understand what's important to yourself, then you'll find ways to better utilize your time, especially if you organize your scheduling well. And you do have to sacrifice some stuff, even though it's my last year and turning 18, obviously, I've had to give up, a lot of social occasions where I could go out with my friends, but I think they understand that I'm trying to achieve something that I really have my mind set for, and for me, I understand that it's going to help me propel myself into the future.
I'm not worthy, Andy. You've just embarrassed me monumentally, Fred. That's everything my life isn't.
I'm sure it's not.
So, are you finished your exams over there in Perth yet?
Yes, I had my last WACE exam on Monday.
So
it was such a big relief because the first thing I did was go home, take a quick shower, and then just head to the range and hit a few golf balls. And it was possibly the best feeling I've ever had. Just to sit back, relax, and just do something that I really do truly love.
So to go and hit golf balls, Fred, this is a bit existential, this one, but to go and hit golf balls once knowing that the study component of your life here for the time being in Australia is finished and that you've already achieved what you needed to achieve to get into Stanford, how much freer and lighter did it feel to be hitting golf balls without all of those burdens sort of hanging over the top of you?
Oh, honestly, at the time I was so invested into just the feeling of making contact with the ball, and it just all those emotions of all the experiences I had over the years kind of came back to me because spending 2 weeks studying for 6 to 8 hours a day. And just grinding with 3-hour exams, it really takes it out of you. But to get over all of that and to just hit a ball, it was really overwhelming. But after that kind of settles in, I kind of thought about it, and I realized that I'll spend I think 6 hours every day for the last 5 years, 5 days a week at school, and I've just realized that I've got an extra 6 hours now.
Yes.
So, I can use that, and honestly, I'm really looking forward to this upcoming basically half of the year because I've got about 8 months to just get as good as possible and to play as many tournaments as I can before I leave to Stanford.
So, Fred, people listening to this might think that you've sacrificed a bit of, the social aspect of your life, and I'm sure that's true, but and this is not a question to you, this is a statement from my knowledge. You are an incredibly popular member of that golfing community over there, especially within those who are close to Golf WA. I know you forewent a chance to play the Australian Interstate Series in Perth this year, just gone.
Yeah.
which probably cut you to the core a little bit. But you've maintained an incredible popularity, especially around Royal Perth. What's it going to mean to you to sort of actually get back out there and grind away with your teammates and your friends in this next few months before you do go to Stanford?
It definitely means a lot to me because, without my golf club and without the people that I've met over the years, I honestly would not be able to have come to where I am now. Even the competitors, like a lot of my good friends that I've grown up with, Minwoo and Curtis and Ben Ferguson, all of those guys, all of the guys on the team, without the competition that they've provided, it wouldn't have made me the person I am today. So honestly, I'm really thankful for everything that, all the experiences that have happened over the last few years. And, in this upcoming 8 months, I'd honestly, trying to play as much as possible in terms of just getting on the course and spending time with them because it's going to be a bit hard to see them when I'm over on the other side of the world for the next 4 years of my life.
I'm not sure if a bookmaker could actually handle this bet, Andy, but I reckon WA at the Interstate Series. We announced during the week that it's going to be at, I think the men's is at Grange East in May. WA.
They're going to be pretty tough.
I'm just saying, WA.
Fred, we were talking to Gary Player. The last round he played in Australia, Craig Bishop caddied for him.
Yeah.
Who's been your only coach, I think, hasn't he? Has Bish been your...
He's been my coach since I was 12 years old.
Okay, so how's that? Yeah. So how's that worked out in terms of how he teaches and the sort of stuff he teaches?
I think being with Craig has been one of the most enjoyable experiences because he's quite a straightforward man. He basically puts it on the table. This is what I want. And that's basically it. And I enjoy the stuff he teaches. I enjoy the theory behind it. He's very, very helpful. And if I do it, he's a happy man, and my golf gets better. So it's a win-win situation, basically.
What was the experience like for you meeting Gary Player? We keep coming back to him today. You had a great interaction with him, I believe, in New Jersey for the Junior President's Cup.
Honestly, it was honestly just the most phenomenal thing. I think it has to be. The 1 week that I spent over there with the other international team players as well as the American team for the Juniors President's Cup, I think that has to be one of the best experiences, if not the best experiences that we've ever had to go through in our lives because, as young aspiring golfers, to meet people like Jack Nicklaus and Gary Player, it was just truly just world-shaking, especially because, we're having like a Caesar salad and, 2 meters away, Gary's going on about one of his stories about how when he first came to America to play golf and how he was carrying like 6 kids and, it was just phenomenal.
So when you get exposed to, those sorts of environments and those sorts of people, Fred, what does it do? Clearly you're driven anyway, we get that, but what does it do to the appetite that you've got to, achieve and the kind of career that you've laid out in front of yourself?
Honestly, it takes it to a whole nother level. Because we had a bit of a joke when we got home on the group chat with the boys in the international team. We were saying, guys, we got to work so hard because, that experience was amazing. And we're saying, a couple of years' time, let's all work really hard so that we can all play together on the real President's Cup team and, stick on to the US. But we were saying, okay, so as for inspiration, we're going to stick a photo of Gary's stomach up on our roof, so whenever we wake up and we don't feel like working hard, we just have a reminder of Gary's hardcore steel abs to propel us.
Did he lift his shirt and show you his belly?
No, he punched his stomach a few times, and I kind of got across what it's been through, what his abs has endured over the years.
Fred, that might be a bit tough to explain to people on the way through in your life on occasions. Hey, Fred, why have you got that man's six-pack stuck on the roof above your bed? That just might take some explaining, Fred.
That might hinder your social life more than anything else, Fred.
Yeah.
Hey, just so we know, just so we've got it for posterity, who were the other young players who you were sharing those messages with? Just so that in case you do end up playing on the President's Cup team together in, say, 10 years' time, we know who who you're sharing those messages with.
So all my really good friends that I've developed really good relationships because of that experience. Aiden, Yip, Rayhan, Thomas, Luca Philippi, Jaden, can't remember a few of last names because it's early in the morning.
Right, of course it
hard
is.
to pronounce. Who else have we got? We got...
You'd had Josh Armstrong and Carl Phillips.
Carl Phillips. Who else?
We'll absolve you.
it.
We'll absolve you a couple. You've done well. Rayhan Thomas is a great little character, isn't he?
Yeah, he's amazing. All of them are really, because when we first got there, I think before I got there, I was a little bit skeptical because I wasn't sure if everyone spoke English, if how the atmosphere would be. But as soon as I got there, I just knew that we were going to have an amazing time because we're all really, really aspiring golfers. We know that this is what we want to do in the future, and to be around someone like Trevor Emmelman, who captained the international juniors team, he really brought us all together, and we seriously had just the best time.
All right, there's so many fascinating layers to this story, and Clayton, I'm interested in yours take on this once Fred responds. But you've come to the game, Fred, from a really different background. It's not your traditional sort of rock up and play 5 holes and score against your mates sort of setup that you've done in Perth. You were telling me yesterday when we were talking about this, because I asked you about, how that background had stood you, and you actually told me an amazing statistic. Correct me if it was it. Tell me what you told me yesterday.
So I think up to 16, I'd never played a game of Stableford. I actually played my first game of Stableford. I think about sometime earlier this year because my coach Craig Bishop forced me to. Not really, but yeah. And I think across my entire life, I've only played around probably less than 10 club competitions.
10 club competitions?
Yeah, 10 club rounds.
Clates, you've played, I put it to you, 20 in November so far.
No, that's more club competitions than I've ever played. I've never played. I would never have played 10, I don't think.
Are you serious?
Wednesday, you need to just turn it up in the Wednesday stable.
Right, play, I just don't go in the comp.
Yeah,
okay, well, that's probably
because I'm shooting enough bad scores for that.
Right.
But for those listening, I mean, that's how we all basically grew up, is trying to, get 36 points and have a net 72 or whatever, and you haven't had that experience necessarily.
Yeah, I think ever since I was growing up, I've had a bit of a different orientation. My first experience with golf actually was I was 2 years old, and I was just a toddler then. I was walking along one day, as toddlers do, and my dad was watching Fred Couples on the TV. And interesting thing is, the Fred Couples is my dad's favorite golfer, and hence why he named me Fred. And I got to meet him in the Juniors President's Cup, which is really cool, but it's another story. And while my dad was watching TV, I was right next to him, and I was just mimicking swinging in the air. And my dad thought to himself, "Wow, that's pretty cute." So he went to Kmart, like 5 minutes away, drive, and just bought a plastic set of kids' golf clubs. And that's where it all started. And then the first time I actually hit a real golf ball was actually just at a nearby park. And the park's about 2 minutes walk away from our house. And that's basically where it all started. And ever since then, I've really just enjoyed just hitting balls and the game of golf. But I've had a bit of a different orientation to it because I've never really played in club comps at all my entire life. But I've always just really enjoyed working on basics, working on my skills, polishing my skills, trying to get them as good as possible. And I think that's definitely one of my strengths and also one of my weaknesses in terms of it's allowed me to become this golfer who's relatively consistent, but also at times lacks the experience from not playing on the course enough. So it's interesting, and it's one of the things that I'm working on in the next 8 months is basically just playing on the course as much as possible to get that experience.
Fred, It's just one of the many fascinating things about you, my friend, and it's part of whatever you've been doing up until this point in time. It's clearly working for you. I think anybody who's listening to this podcast and this chat with you today is going to be putting your name in their little black book to follow the progress of Fred Lee, because it's clearly been a really interesting one to this point in time. You are an incredible achiever. To be able to do what you've done this year from a study point of view, let alone what you've been able to do with your golf, is absolutely remarkable. And, mate, the next 3 or 4 years are going to be a whole lot of fun for you, and we wish you all the very best. Thanks for waking up this early in the morning to tell us your story, and we wish you all the very best, mate. Thanks for joining us on the show.
Thank you guys so much.
Thanks,
Fred.
Fred Lee joining us on Inside the Ropes.
The Golf Australia website is now the place to go to look up your handicap and so much more. Whether you're out and about on your phone or in the office trying to avoid work, just go to golf.org.au and punch your golf link number into the box at the top of the homepage. Who knows, maybe that last round was just good enough to put you in single figures. While you're on the site, check out the daily golf results at your club, view our course index for up-to-date ratings, read the latest golf news from home and abroad, listen to Australian golf podcasts and interviews, and watch video tournament highlights or tips to improve your game. It's everything a golf tragic could want. Visit golf.org.au today, the home of Australian golf.
Hey, it's Jeff Ogilvy. I can't be in Australia very often, but I love keeping up with everything on Inside the Ropes podcast. Good bunch of guys, and I love listening.
Welcome back to the show. We've had the pleasure on this podcast today to meet two players at the complete opposite ends of their golfing spectrums and journeys. Hopefully you've enjoyed it as much as we have. Would you subscribe to young players coming through, get over, and as far as what you know about the American college system, Clates, would you encourage young players to get over from Australia, get over there and get involved in that if they can?
Not really.
Why is that?
Because I don't think it's a very good system. But Freddie's going to a proper university where I know his dad's big on study and he'll get a degree that's worth something. I mean, going to a university in the back of Arkansas and getting a degree in basket weaving is not any use to anybody.
The world needs more baskets. I mean, don't dismiss the work that basket weavers do, Michael.
That's true. But, you know, I think Freddie's going to go there and get a... He's going there for the education as much as the golf.
Yeah.
And most kids who go there for the golf. And I think Dale Lynch and Steve Barron, which is why they started the VIS, was to stop kids going there because they thought, you know, we can do it better here. And the results of that program, Appleby, Allenby, Ogilvy, all those guys that came out of that program was there for all to see, because Lynch's view was that university coaches were obsessed with results. It wasn't about teaching players to play on the tour.
Yeah.
It was about playing well for the college this week. So they wouldn't make a necessary change for the long term because they had to play next week. It was all about next week playing well for the university, whereas the VIS took a much longer view of the way things happened, and that was very successful for a long time. But Lynchy spoke long and hard about it's a bad system. I mean, all the players who played the tour for a long time came out of that system, and people drew the bow that, well, therefore it's a good system. Well, if the system had been when you left high school in America, you went to work for McDonald's from 6 to 8 in the morning, and then you played golf for 12 hours a day, Fred Couples and John Cook and Mark O'Meara and Hal Sutton would have all gone through that, working at McDonald's, played golf all day. They would have gone to the tour, and that would have been the system.
Yeah.
That's the system. You go to McDonald's, you work from 6 till 8, then you practice Raiders Day. So the good players in America would have gotten that tour no matter what the system was. The fact that it was a college system led everyone around the world to believe that's the best system, when it clearly wasn't.
What about the notion, and I'm just extrapolating based on the interview that we've just done with him, that notion of perfecting the swing, learn how to hit balls, understand the technique of the golf swing, as opposed on the range, as opposed to learning how to play a golf course, which he clearly hasn't done much of by his own admission, and that's something that he's going to do in the next sort of 6 to 8 months. Go and play golf courses more. Is there a right balance in all of that somewhere?
No, it depends on the way you learn it, on your personality. I mean, I think.
But you would have played golf courses. You would have learned by jumping the fence and playing 6 holes after school, wouldn't you?
And I had a lot of balls too, but you know, there was no teaching then. We didn't know what. I mean, Freddie's got a really good technique because Bish has taught him. Bish has emphasised the technical part of the game because it's important. But two guys Ben Crenshaw and Tom Kite. Same teacher, Harvey Pennock, grew up in the same place. And Pennock said to them, Ben, he said, don't listen to anything I'm telling Tom. And Tom, don't listen to anything I'm telling Ben. Because Crenshaw was a player, Kite was a practicer.
Okay.
And Crenshaw went out in the course and he played holes. Kite beat balls. And that they completely approached golf from a completely different perspective, both of them. But Tiger learned how to... I was actually watching a thing last night about... It was an interview with Earl Woods saying... He said, Jack Nicklaus learnt the game from the tee to the green. He said, I thought that was wrong. So I taught Tiger to play from the green backwards. And it was why Tiger had a much better short game than Jack. So, clearly he was teaching... Clearly Tiger was taught how to play the game and understand the strategy and play. And the technique was a necessary part of that. But it wasn't an emphasis on you have to get your swing right before you can go and play golf.
Do you find that fascinating, Hazy, listening to that? Like, just the different ways of getting the same results and, the approach of a kid like Fred Lee as opposed to, he's clearly in a different stratosphere than players like you and me, but we just wanted to go and play golf courses. I want to go and see if I can make par. That's just the way we learnt the game.
Yeah, there's so many fascinating aspects, not only to Fred, but just to what Clayton was saying. Yeah. There's so many different ways to skin a cat. There's, it's innumerable.
I mean, Peter Thompson was a player. David Graham was a practicer.
Yeah.
And David Graham Vijay Singh was a practicer. He just beat balls. Gary Player was a practicer. But they knew, however way those great players got to where they got to, they all learned how to get the ball in the hole.
Yeah, yeah.
And, Vijay beat balls for 8 hours a day, but he figured out he knew he had to get the ball in the hole. But he would argue, I got the ball in the hole because I had the ball great every day I played. I was long and I was strong and I had lots of greens and I didn't have to be that great a putter because I had the ball so much better than everyone else, or as well as anyone in the world did at the time. So,
I think you can over practice, Andy. I'm staggered that guys will come off a tournament round and shoot a 76, and clearly they'll be frustrated with having done that. But it might be a 40-mile-an-hour crosswind on a lot of holes, and going to hit balls on a range when you've beaten yourself up for 5 hours in conditions that anyone's going to struggle in, I think it's totally counterproductive. And I'm staggered to see so many pros after a round go and do that. And the range is full after rounds of guys battling in wins, and I don't understand that ever, Clayton.
Well, it depends what wind you're practicing. I mean, a left to right wind's a complete disaster, but a right to left wind's fine. Practicing down wind's a waste of time. Into the wind's great. I mean, I played with Herb Elliott in the Portsea Pro-Am once, and he told me a story about, he said, I train harder than everyone. And I think it was at Merv Lincoln.
Yeah.
Merv Lincoln. He said it was a hot north wind, horrible day in Melbourne, 100 degrees, desperately horrible day. And he said, I'm going to go out to train because no one else is going to be out here today. He said, I went down to the track and he said, there's Merv Lincoln training. I couldn't believe it. He said, but he was running downwind. He said, I was running into the wind. He said he was wasting his time. He wasn't doing him any good.
Like Mike Hussey tells the story, they're getting ready for Christmas dinner at their place. And, they're setting up the house and got the food, getting the food ready to cook and the whole thing. And he thinks, someone's practicing right now. Someone's practicing. Somewhere in the world, someone's practicing. Yeah. So he would say to his wife, I've got to go and hit ball. I've got to go and have a net for 2 hours. I'll be back. Yeah. And he'd tee someone up to go and throw balls at him just for a little throwdown. And because he was the notion that somebody else was practicing and getting better while he was sitting around about to eat, roast lamb or something and some prawns just didn't sit well with him. So that's the thing that drives me, isn't it? Other bits and pieces before we wrap it up. Not a great week for Australians around the world on the major tours. It was a struggle for the boys and the girls. Matt Jones was the best of the Aussie, 16 back from Patton Kazai, who won Mayakoba, but beat Ricky Fowler. Did you see the shot Kazai played into 18? He's played this shot into 18 from the... Did you see it, Clates?
I didn't. I wasn't watching it. No.
So, no, I can understand why. It's a bit hard to get yourself up at this time of the year to watch these things. He's played, it looked like about a 7-iron from just inside a fairway bunker. His heels, on his stance, his heels were hanging over the edge of the bunker. And he's knocked it 165 into the middle of the green to have his two-putt to beat Fowler and win his first PGA Tour event. There's going to be better shots played and more celebrated shots played in this season of PGA Tour golf. But boy, oh boy, in terms of the degree of difficulty and what was on the line for him, it's a shot a lot of people should go back and have a look at if they didn't see him play. It was, degree of difficulty was, I imagine, pretty extreme.
He's a pretty good player, isn't he? I haven't seen him play much, but big, strong kid.
Yeah. Controlled it well. No, it was amazing stuff.
He showed a bit last year. Like he was consistent for quite a while last year. I think that's a sign of, you don't necessarily have to win in your rookie year. There's so many young sensations that sort of come out.
Yeah.
I reckon he's got a bit about him.
Yeah, he might have. Brandon Grace wins Nedbank. Sam Brazel was the best of the Australians, 14 back. Are the golf courses in South Africa any good?
I've played enough there to really make an informed judgment. But my
they don't look very good on TV.
But my guess is no. I think people underestimate how important Alistair McKenzie coming here in 1926 for 3 months was to golf in Australia. He showed us what a great golf course was, what architecture was about. He took on Alec Russell as his partner and Mick Morecambe, who built his work, and he showed us what proper golf was. And South Africa never had that. They never had a great architect go there. And so I was up in Sydney last week. I look at Riviera Country Club in LA, which is not on a great piece of land. George Thomas did an amazing job. And we were talking about what would have happened if George Thomas or a great architect had gone to the northern part, across the bridge in Sydney and built a great golf course up there. It would have transformed golf in that city. But no one ever did anything that was really very good. So Tom Doak's redoing Concord now, and I think he'll do well. He'll do a great job there, and show people what's possible on that. Because it's good land up there, not sandy, but it's good. It's really interesting undulations, and it's just not very good golf because they didn't. For what it's not the place to be critical, but Mackenzie showed us what great golf was, and we learned the places that learned the lessons of Mackenzie. We've got great golf in Australia, but South Africa never had that.
I think the ones we see on that Sunshine Tour, Andy, just pretty bland, to be honest, on TV. I mean, there's that where they play the Schwani Open or the Joburg Open. Yeah, they're nice-looking courses, but they're just run-of-the-mill. There's
straight
nothing
up and down.
There's nothing to say, you must come and play me.
We played at a senior European senior event at Fancourt, which is Gary played at a course around an airfield and did a remarkable job on a flat site, building up the dunes and making it actually feel like it was a natural golf course. But that was a pretty good golf course. We played a course Australasia versus Southern Africa. So they included Zimbabwe and South Africa on their team and Fiji, because Fiji played on our team. But at Houghton, which was just a very average Kikuyu Sydney golf course, very average. It would maybe be it might be the 60th best course in Australia.
There you go. Yeah.
So no, but we were incredibly lucky to have Mackenzie come here.
And lastly, the Blue Bay Classic, Shanshan Fang wins that. Sarah Jane Smith. What was that?
No. I was about to talk about Shanshan. I think
she's remarkable.
She's absolutely remarkable.
She's great.
And we spoke of her last week, saying she was the first back-to-back winner, and now she's the only, obviously, 3-time winner for the year, and it's enough to transport her all the way to the top of the world rankings, which I think is a great reward. I mean, we all love Soyeon Yu in here. We loved her reign, and I'm sure it will extend at some point in the near future. But Shanshan seems like a great character to me, and a huge boost for the game of golf in China, especially to do it on her home soil.
Yep.
What a character she is, wearing her pajamas, as my beautiful fiancée described them as on the Sunday to win, Andy. So
her favourite pants, by the sounds of things. I think their favourite outfit. So
what she's done is set up an unbelievable tour championship in Florida this week on the LPGA Tour. I mean, it's extraordinary. The ramifications of that result basically open up a whole heap of end-of-season possibilities.
Everything's to play for, just every kind of player of the year, scoring average, the whole box. Everything's money. Everything's up for grabs.
I think the only one that isn't is obviously the rookie, which is Sung Yoon Park. So there's a couple of decimal points, Clates, in the race to be number one at the end of the year. So it will come down to a couple of putts on Sunday.
Soyoung's she was second there last year, so Tommy Watson gave her a bad club on that. He didn't, but she stuffed it under the lip of a bunker on the 17th hole and lost to Charlie Hull by a shot. So she's always played well there. So and she's coming back to play the Australian Open, which
And you might be able to shed a little bit of light, I'm not sure, but you obviously have a close connection with Sue O, but she's decided not to play in the Tour Championship despite being qualified.
Yeah, she played 5 weeks in a row in Asia, and plus it's an expensive week to go there. I mean, she told me it was like $9,000 to go there, to cost. Caddy, her airfare, caddy airfare, just the expense of the week. She said, played 5 weeks in a row, it's going to cost me $9,000 to fly to Florida. She said, I can come home for a week. And her plan is to play the first event next year in the Bahamas. So it was either play this and not play Bahamas, or take this one off and play Bahamas. And she's going to go and see Cameron McCormick in January. And so that made a lot of sense to me.
Sounds pretty sensible.
To do what she's doing.
Garcia, Rose, Fleetwood, race to Dubai. It's down to the three of them. So we'll find out who is crowned the champion of the European Tour there. The Genesis Australian Open, the build-up continues. We'll be up there next week, obviously. We're all, obviously, again, looking forward to that. It's going to be another big week.
Yeah, it is going to be another big week. Just one before we get onto that, Andy, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
I'm very sorry to interrupt the flow, but the European Tour Q School is rolling on, depending on when you're listening to this.
Yes.
So we're recording early Thursday, and I just saw some scores drop through. So we've still got 3 Aussies going after 5 rounds, 1 more to go. Little surprise packet. Jack Munro from Queensland still hanging in there. Shot a nice little 69, I think, today to be in the mix. But Matt Miller fell back a little bit with even past 72. It's a pretty hot tournament over there in Spain, and Ash Hall's probably got a work ahead of him. But good to see 3 different names vying for Australian European Tour cards. Unfortunately, Richard Green has probably run his race a little bit in that context. He didn't make the cut after 4 among a host of others. So good effort, and we'd love to see those 3 guys go well tomorrow in the final round. So Jack Munro, Ash Hall, and Matt Miller.
It's hard getting a card in Europe now. I mean,
it's brutal.
It's really hard.
3 really intense layers of Q School.
It's a long grind, isn't it, to get through?
Yeah.
So to get to the pointy end the way they have is an achievement in and of itself. But now that they're there, they're going to be wanting to finish this thing off.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
And now back to Genesis AO Radio, Andy. We're pumped for this. It's our 4th year of doing it. It's got some rave reviews from people who may have questionable sanity, but no, we are pumped. So it's yourself and Clates, Martin Blake, Matt Cutler, Mark Allen, John Huggan, and
Sue
Sue might drop in.
I'm trying.
Oh, that'd be great.
Well, she's going because Curtis Luck rang me said, "Can you come and caddy for me next week?" Oh, I've got to do the radio. So I spoke to Johnny Sutherland. He said, "No, you go and caddy." So I'll be in when I can. But I saw Sue yesterday. I said, "You got to go and do some radio." I'm not doing the radio. I said, "You'd be great. Go and do the radio." So
it should be awesome.
She'll drop in.
That's your job to drag her in there.
I'll drag her in. No worries.
Her in there.
And one other person might drag in is Jared Lyle. So he's coming up, which is fantastic. He's got a long or not long. He's got a short road here, but it's going to be a very precarious few weeks coming up. So he's going to hopefully drop in and say g'day.
Are we allowed to talk about the special project that you're working on, or is that storm at the moment?
No, we can touch on it without going into depth. But Martin Blake and I are actually starting to interview Jared for a book, which, depending on how his health goes in the next 6 to 8 months, will come out next year sometime. There's a lot in the air right now, and he's fighting fit for all who are interested. But he's got a critical phase coming up, and it's very, very serious what he's about to endure. So, we have all got our fingers crossed, and not that the book's of any relevance whatsoever, that he can come through and we can actually finish everything as we intend to.
Can I do a little segue from that? It's an unfortunate segue, but it's an important one to the longest day. I'm do this thing. It's been around into its 2nd year now. The longest day, where we encourage anybody listening who thinks they can do it, to play 72 holes of golf in a day at your club, any club you can organise to have it done at, in a day, preferably in the back half of December. What we hope to do is get people to do it, raise money on the way through, and all money goes to the treatment of melanoma and research into melanoma. If it sounds like something you're supposed to be difficult, and it is, I did it last year, and I'm doing it with you this year, Hazy, so I can't wait. And we're doing it at Kerr Lewis and we're looking forward to that enormously. If you think this is a challenge you're prepared to take on and raise some money, any money raised goes to the Cancer Council Victoria. It's really, really important. Other states are getting involved in this, but the Vics are further down the track than others. If you want to know a bit more about it, www.thelongestday.org.au is the place to go. You'll have, if you do it and you raise some money and you get through the 72 holes, I'll guarantee you this, the sense of satisfaction and achievement when you knock your last putt in at about 8:30 on whatever day you choose to do it is remarkable. It's a very odd thing to explain to people, Clates. You're about to experience it, Hazy. It's a great sense of achievement when you get to the end of the day.
I'll get a great sense of achievement if I knock in an 8-footer on the first hole, Andy. Any 8-footer for me will be gold. But yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to it. Great, thanks to Lewis for hosting us, and hopefully a few people can come down and say good day during the day. It's just as you said, not a specific time, not a specific club.
Nope.
Just get it organised. Yep. It's such a great course.
And what you'll find is that your club, if you're a member or you play, locally somewhere, you'll find that your club is really, really, in more cases than not, happy to help and make it a possibility for you to get around as quickly as you possibly can. And it's obviously for a really, really, really good cause. So, thelongestday.org.au. Anything else before we shut up shop on what's been a pretty extraordinary podcast?
Yeah, it has been. It's funny how this podcast feels itself. Like, we never really script it. We just roll and see what happens, and who knows where we end up. Just wrapping up that AO Radio, Genesis AO Radio. We're on air for 5 hours on Thursday and Friday from sometime between 11. I think we're starting around 11 o'clock on Thursday and Friday, and then from probably 12 o'clock on Saturday and Sunday at the Australian Golf Club next week during the Emirates Australian Open. You can listen on earpieces at the course. You can listen through the app, I believe still happens. Hopefully a few radio stations will pick it up and do a simulcast around Australia. But for those generally wanting to listen, go online and you can follow it live. You can stream it live the whole way. It's going to be awesome. We have a ball, and I'm really encourage people to get involved with that. And just a bit more housekeeping, Andy. We've had a bit of a lack of conversation. I know that Gary Player beautifully put bifurcation on the table earlier, but we've had a lack of conversation about reviews in the last little while. Greg Oakford, our erstwhile information provider in such areas, has told us now that we have remarkably 61 reviews, and 61 of them are 5-star. So we are incredibly grateful for all our loyal listeners, and we encourage you to leave a 5-star review. We will never mention you if you don't, so you better do a 5-star one. Just a couple. Do you want to read one out, Clates, or do you want to read one, Andy? I'm struggling a bit here, but what about this is really small writing, which is, I've been a keen listener since the first episode. If you're looking for an insight to golfing in Australia and around the world, this is the podcast. Steering the ship, and excellent additions from Hazy, Clayton, Joe. Sorry about the others, guys. It's something I look forward to tuning in at the end of each week, and that is from Nitsuj Serbon.
Wow, magnificent to have you on board.
I'm sorry to be pumping up our tyres, but apparently
someone's got to.
Someone has to, and if we encourage people to leave 5-star reviews, we get a higher promotability or something on iTunes. I don't know all that sort of stuff, but get behind us if you like what we're dribbling on about.
What are you going to do with the rest of your day, Clates? We're finishing now. It's 10 to 8. We've been here since 5:45.
Well, speaking of books, I'm doing a book with Charlie Happel. So I need to start writing.
What is it about?
Golf. No, it's just essays on golf, just different thoughts and stuff. So we'll
good man, Charlie.
See how that goes. Man. Yeah, he's doing some. I'm doing something. I haven't spoken to Huggy yet, but Huggy and Ogilvy will do hopefully a couple of pieces. And
brilliant.
Steve Williams doing a couple of bits. Greg Norman's writing something. So it'll be just a book on golf.
Will Greg Norman have his shirt on when he writes it, or will he take it off?
No pictures in the book. So
right, that's disappointing.
Put Greg on the cover.
Andy, just before we go, I've just had a text message from Matt Dowling, a friend of the program. He's actually, remember last week we had Tom Heaton on?
Yes, I do.
The young fella who was the Australian Golf Club youngest ever club champion.
Yep.
I've just got a text message saying that in the first group of the day at the New South Wales Open, which we probably should have mentioned anyhow, and I apologise for not having done so, out in Penrith. He's had a 9-iron and aced the second hole.
Tommy Heaton has.
Tom Heaton is your leader of the New South Wales Open with, I don't know, it's probably his 43rd hole-in-one by the age of 15.
Matt Dowling, the Titleist Matt Dowling?
Yep.
Yeah, good guy, yeah.
That's great.
No doubt with the Titleist ball.
No doubt with the Titleist
ball.
Absolutely no doubt about it.
Remember, Tom, because last week he said he had a hole-in-one in his first competition round
first ever.
ever.
Yeah.
Here he is, no doubt, in his first pro event, not as a pro.